Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Odisho. Thanks for tuning in today. Today, we're going to be talking about blending modes, and I'm not going to be going through a technical explanation of all the mathematical reasons behind every blending mode, but I'm going to be more so giving you my practical tips and tricks and some of my favorite ones to use. We're going to try to pack in as much as we can in the next 30 or so minutes. So, what better day? I think today is some special solar eclipse day. So what better day to talk about blending modes and not look at the sun. So I have a project open in Premiere, and the blending modes are going to be found if you have your clip open in the Effect Controls panel. And you see under the Opacity tab, there's the blend mode. So in there, your clip is normally on normal, but you see a bunch of different blending modes, and they're kind of sectioned off into sections if you see this little line. So we have like the darkening ones, the lightening ones, the ones that sort of mix, and then the ones that sort of invert colors. And then we have ones that work on like color saturation. Like I said, I'm not giving a precise mathematical explanation of these. If you want, there's great resources on the Adobe help page. Like if you just search blending modes, Adobe help or something. And I also have done more in-depth videos on my YouTube as well as others you can find on YouTube. But the great thing is we don't need to know the mathematical reasoning behind all of these to use them in a practical way. And some of these you won't even use that much in your daily editing. Some of them you'll use much more than others. And also the great thing about blending modes is they're not only useful in Premiere, they're basically one of the foundational tools of any editing, whether you're in Photoshop or Premiere or After Effects. So we'll begin with a very quick one, and that's if I have two clips on top of each other. Like let's just drag another clip in on top of each other. One of the most basic blending modes you can do is just the opacity. So if I have this clip at 100% opacity, even though that's not in the blend mode section, we can consider it something like a blending mode. We can lower the opacity. So if I just type in 50% here, we'll see 50% of the top clip showing and 50% of the bottom clip showing, which sometimes is all you need. You don't need a special blend. But not to get too ahead of ourselves, but the cool part is we can actually choose some of these blending modes, let's say darken, and we can get more unique blends than just using 100 or 50%. So not only can you do opacities on the clip itself, but let's say there was an effect on this clip. So I don't know, let's say a blur effect. Gosh, let's do a directional blur actually, the more fun. So let's say there was a directional blur on this effect. You can also add masks on effects. So these little masks, we're not going to get too into masks in this clip. I've actually done a previous stream with Adobe Live all about those, which you can check out the replay of. But you can also add opacity on masks. So that's a little bit ahead of ourselves, but basically opacity is available in many different areas in Premiere Pro, and it can be a cool way to blend two things together. Now, I'm actually just going to duplicate this same piano clip on top of itself. You can drag it in twice, or I'm going to hold Option and click and drag it. That's a quick shortcut to duplicate. And one of the cool things we can do with effects and a clip on top of itself is, let's say I did add a blur effect onto this top clip. One of the most simple ways to create a blending mode trick is like blur the top clip and then set it to a different blending mode. So if I do 50%, now I get this dreamy, hazy look. And here's it without and with. It's already kind of a cool glowy clip. But you can also add that on a blending mode. So if I use something like overlay or soft light, I can even leave it at 100%. I get these interesting glowy sort of looks. Some of these multiplicative blending modes like overlay and soft light are going to increase the contrast of the colors. So if you don't want that, you can just do something like normal, or screen will make things lighter. Darken will make things darker. But again, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. So I have in my project media panel, and there's lots of cool ways you can look at things in list view or icon view. I actually have a screenshot. So sometimes when we're editing a video, right, we might want to work with some PNG or arrow or logo even. And this is one really quick practical tip I want to teach you guys is using blending modes to get rid of a background. So let's say I wanted to point out something on this clip. Well, actually, one quick tip that has nothing to do with blending modes is if I want to reposition this arrow, I can click on the motion section and drag the arrow. I can even rotate it where I want and scale it where I want. That's a really useful, quick one. And rather than using like the scale and position, although you can use those too. And it's not like I want to mask out this clip. I didn't get a transparent one somewhere. So one quick thing I can do is just using the power of blending modes, because this is pure black and white. If I set it to something like darken or even multiply, it'll only show through the darker colors of this PNG and it'll hide the lighter colors because it's absolute black and white. That's an instant way for me to remove the background there and position it where I want. On the opposing side, if it happened to be flipped in colors, like just to show you, I can add an invert effect on that in the effect control, in the effects, the channel effects. Invert's a cool one. You can just literally flip the red, green, blue color channels. And in this case, setting it to lighten would just show the white arrow. So you can use lighten and darken to remove, to like show or hide black. Obviously, in a clip such as this bird clip, it's not pure black and white. So if we try to do something like, as in the previous example, if we try to do something like darken on this clip, well, it will sort of show through, but sometimes the birds have white patches on their body and they don't all the way show through. If we do lighten as well, it will sort of only show the clouds, but still we have areas of gray. So another cool trick I wanted to show you is, since we're not working with pure black and white, we can actually prep our clips to work with blending modes. So in the Lumetri color, there's actually a few ways you could prep it, but you could do something like adjusting the curves. So let me set this back to normal. I could do something like really cranking up the contrast by adjusting the curve. And that really cuts out a lot of the gray and basically tries to make it black and white. This can make your edges a little bit rough, but in this case, it's kind of cool. We still have a little bit of blue in the corner, but shouldn't be a big deal. If I really want, I can even just scale up, sort of cut that out. But now that I have more pure of a black and white, I can play around with these blending mode tricks. So if I set this to darken, even though the clip underneath has black piano keys and some dark parts, we basically only get the birds. So pretty cool. Let me actually put it on a lighter clip so you can maybe get a better idea. So let's say this clip here. Obviously, it's not meant to look like we're really adding birds into the scene. It's more like a cool abstract effect. And actually, I think it would be nicer if we flipped it like I was showing you with the invert effect. So if I set it to lighten, now the video underneath will sort of show through where the birds are. But if I was to invert it, now we have this cool bird overlay, which we made. It's not as if it's an illustration. It's just another video clip we took and we applied it on the bottom video clip. And a lot of these effects, you know, I have the birds on top of the clip, but they work in reverse ways too. If I put the guy on top of the birds clip, and this is what we have so far, and I set him to like screen or multiply, we get the same idea, but backwards. And you might be thinking, what's the point of that? But it can be useful to be able to work in both ways, depending on the colors that you're starting with. So those are some basic starting ones that are kind of cool and neat. But I also wanted to show you guys how you can blend two clips together to make a transition. So let's say I have a couple clips from a similar kind of day or scene, and I want to transition between them in a cool way. So right now it's just a cut. And normally we might think of a transition as, right click in between the clip, add default transitions, maybe do a crossfade, which is sort of like opacity, I guess. Let's do it this way. Default transition. I mean, in a way, this is just taking one from 100% opacity to none. But what if we used blending modes instead to create a little bit more unique of a transition? So I'm actually going to duplicate this top clip, and I'm going to put it in between the cuts. And I'm going to shrink it down just so it's about the same size of tape as was that blending mode. So basically what's going on, if I lower the opacity of this a little bit just to show you, I have the clip A, then like a 50% opacity of clip B, and then clip B, 50% opacity of clip A, then clip B. So if I put this on a cool blending mode, like, I don't know, difference is a cool one. It sort of inverts everything based on the colors. Exclusion is another one. If I put this on a cool blending mode like that, and let's even grab our rate stretch tool with pressing R on our keyboard and sort of speed it up here, we could get this cool blending mode flash transition. So if I press play now, let's see, we get this unique blending mode transition, and I can play around with different ones. So maybe I don't like difference, maybe I like exclusion. And maybe you can even combine that with a simple crossfade. And you can get an interesting effect. So it's not one that you're going to find in your default transitions. It's like a custom transition. It's a pretty cool one. And I'm sure you can play around with many different kinds as well. So that's just one basic idea. And another cool way that I wanted to show you how to use some blending modes is blending two clips that are the same clip. So let's say we have this clip. It's the same clip on top of itself like we were doing earlier. And initially we showed that putting the same clip on top of itself, but setting it to a blending mode like overlay or soft light, is going to sort of multiply the colors together and increase the contrast. I like to think of overlay as like soft light as like a softer version of overlay. And hard light is like taking everything underneath of the clip and putting it on overlay. So like I said, you don't need to know the mathematical explanations here to practically understand how they work. Even though what I'm telling you might not be mathematically correct, that's how they kind of work in my head. So if we were to do something like blur this clip, like I said earlier, we get a fuzzy, dreamy look, right? But another cool thing is, what if we were to stagger this clip? So let's just make this clip start, I don't know, like 2 seconds after the original clip. And let's set it to a blending mode like soft light. Let's add a couple more seconds. Now, because we've staggered the clip, we actually get this cool contrasted echo effect. Actually, that's pretty cool. I've never made an effect exactly like that. If I zoom in here to show you guys, let's not zoom in that much. Let's just go full screen. You could see this cool echo effect that happens, and there is an echo effect built into Premiere, but you can kind of create custom effects in this way. And what if we set it to even something not like overlay? Let's set it to I mean, we can play around with different ones. So let's set it to darken or screen. We can get a cool echo effect. Or let's set it to exclusion like we were just playing with. We can get this cool effect where the original clip is only showing in the time difference or the echo. Let's say I was to duplicate that clip one more time. I'm holding Option and dragging it up and moving it over another few seconds. I mean, we can really start to get some cool abstract effects using this method. It could be cool for like a transition or a music video effect or something like that. So another really cool one, so far we've just been blending video clips together, but one of probably my favorite uses of blending modes is blending a clip with a texture or a picture. So I have in my project some textures and images. So I've actually shown some cool ways. Previously, I actually used Adobe Photoshop to use the generative fill tool I asked Photoshop to make me a paper texture. This is not that, but I've made videos like that. I asked it to make me a paper texture. And then I took that paper texture that Photoshop generated from scratch and I dragged it into my Premiere project. And now I have this paper texture on top of my video clip. And of course, we can use blending modes like soft light, overlay, even opacities to add cool paper textures or different type of unique textures right on top of our video clips. And we can play around with the scale or position of them. And this could be great for, I don't know, a title screen or documentary. I mean, I can see all types of uses for cool textures on top. And nowadays it's getting so crazy that you can even generate your own textures in Photoshop, which I think is really cool. But here's another cool idea I had. Let's say instead of a paper texture, we took a picture or a scan of a book and all the little words in the font. So let's grab a different stock footage clip. Let's see. What do we want to do? Let's do the flower, I don't know. And we grabbed the book screenshot. And there's a lot of cool things you can do. If I just want the ink to show, I can use the blending mode of like darken or multiply. And in this case, I don't have to go in and adjust the contrast like I was doing with the birds, because I actually want that very subtle paper texture to show through on some of these parts between the text. But I think that's a super cool little effect there. Could be, and you can even lower the opacity if you don't want that full ink. And another thing I did previously too was, because these are pictures and they're just static, we can actually add some keyframes onto them. So if I add a keyframe onto the position and I moved over and I just sort of gently had the text scrolling as the video clip plays, maybe not that fast, but you get the idea. We can have this really cool, scrolling text montage between two clips maybe. And you don't have to set it to multiply either. You can set it to blending modes like soft light or overlay, or you can play around with different ones. I know I've just been showing the same few, but pin light, that's a cool one. I mean, now we have some of the images coming through the black ink, but some of the flower coming over the paper. So, I mean, really cool blending effects that you can do with textures and videos combined, combining multimedia formats here. And I wanted to show another cool example here. Let's say I have a clip like this eye close-up, and I wanted to sort of show what the eye is looking at on the screen. It's got some code here. Because this code is bright whites and blues and oranges and a dark black background, this is the perfect sort of thing to set to a blending mode like screen or lighten or color dodge and maybe scale it up a bit. And now, I mean, that's pretty cool right there. We can even maybe blur it if we're worried about scaling it up so much, or if we want to sort of focus on what the eye is focusing on. If I press play on this, I mean, now we have two video clips. So you could see typing on the screen, and we can also see movement in the eye. It's not just like a paper texture, but we've used the video of the code on the screen almost like a texture itself. So really cool stuff you can do there. And this is just blending two layers together. You don't have to only blend two layers. On top of this, I could throw a paper texture on the third layer if I want. But a couple other cool ones that I have are, and these I actually offer on my website shop, but you can make your own or find similar clips online, is, let's grab this clip here. We can add, I mean, this is something you'll probably see a lot nowadays, is sort of like a Super 8 or film texture look. So what these are is I've actually had some film developed and scanned, just some blank film that I wanted to use in this way. And if I go into my Lumetri color panel and let's see, increase the contrast of this, just like we were doing earlier. So I have more pure black and white, but I still get some of that noise and that film sprocket that everyone loves. I can set this to a blending mode like multiply. And now I easily have, yeah, see, like I don't want to make it pure white because I actually want some of that graininess and dimness to come through. I can take my high quality HD footage, transform it back into a cool Super 8 style using an overlay that we've simply put on a blending mode. It's not, I mean, it's kind of like magic, but it's a lot easier than a magic trick. And if I want to even sell it a little bit more, I can go to my effects and grab a posterized time effect and add that onto this jazz clip. And I can lower the frame rate so it looks almost more like a Super 8 type of effect. So that's 8. Maybe I can make it a little bit more than that and just cut it in half. I mean, we've taken the clip and maybe I can even really sell it by adding a little bit of a Gaussian blur on the jazz clip, just a couple pixels, maybe not even that many, 3. And if you want, you can probably go in there and adjust the color, like Lumetri color. I can go to the basic correction, maybe desaturate the clip, or maybe I can add my own little color tints to make it feel more vintage. But that's a really cool effect. I do offer these on my web shop, but there's also lots of other textures you can find or make yourself if you get creative with it. Another one that I've done in the past is like a bad TV static noise effect. So let's go from having the clip be like Super 8 to I've done all these scans and recordings of some bad TV noise or glitchy TV noise, which there's effects like this in After Effects and stuff, but why not use the organic thing? And same thing, we can set these to multiplicative blending modes like overlay and lower the opacity quite a bit, maybe to just get a cool fuzzy texture. Or we could set them to, I don't know, screen or something like that to just get those white bits of noise. And this can be a really cool overlay, or it can even be like a transition, just the same way we did earlier. If I don't want it covering the entire screen, by the way, I can just simply create a mask. Let's click invert, and let's increase the mask size and feather it quite a bit. So, sure. So, yeah, these are just a lot of different ways you can blend. You can blend color mats, you can blend pictures, textures, and you can blend clips together. This is just barely scratching the surface. But if you want, you can check out tons more on my YouTube, Justin Odisho, or here on Adobe Live. I've covered similar things before. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you learned some cool blending mode tips and tricks in this short session, and get out there and create some cool blended images.